Yazu-san, you mentioned that on back of 2024, we saw a great performance in the Japanese market, most notably the Nikkei. Would you be able to give us an overview of how investors or traders can take a view on the Nikkei market?
Yeah, Nikkei index that actually constituents comprising some very huge some weight of tech companies, including semiconductor companies. Imagine that Warren Buffett started to buy Japan trading firms such as Mitsubishi Corporation. That could give us some very great some movement into the and also drivers to Japanese market and the Nikkei index. And then so Nikkei index futures and the Nikkei index options, these were very actively traded contract compared to some other countries. So these are really some having some huge liquidity into the market. Nikkei 225 mini futures, which is one of the most some actively traded futures contract equity index futures contract in Asia. We invited overseas investors around 70% of trading volume for Nikkei 225 futures or Nikkei 225 mini futures or even options, where 70% account for were coming from overseas investors. We really wanted to invite more and more domestic some retail players into the market because Japanese retail players are very famous for preferring to invest in FX or cryptocurrency. There could be some possibilities to get these some trading flows into Japanese equity index futures and options market, so that we could see more and more liquidities and many some investors can enjoy that market situations. In that concept, we launched Nikkei Micro Futures in 2023, 2 years ago.
Oh, it's fairly recent.
And yeah, and also mini options as well to invite more and more retail players. Then these some contracts, so we see a very successful situation. Currently, the Nikkei Micro Futures, even having 2 years trading history, but now in terms of trading volume, that Nikkei Micro is the second biggest sum traded product in JPX derivatives.
Based on what I understand when I discussed with a few analysts on this show, I understand that 50% of the index is weighted into the tech sector. How would these impact investors in the current in the current market landscape?
Yeah, 50% some index weight, meaning that so that could get some huge impact on some tech companies or listed companies, some stocks movement, especially the US stock markets. That means Nvidia or some others giving some huge some exposure into the hours. And also Apple's movement could give us some huge some impact on some semiconductor companies in Japan. It's a bit some easy to see some next movement because it's a kind of some mirror of some US tech companies price movement. But this is only one dimension. The other side, I would emphasize that imagine which companies having the biggest index weight of Nikkei 225. Answer is Uniqlo.
I'm truly surprised that that's the highest weightage for the index. Apart from seeing it as being heavily weighted in the tech sector, there's another dimension. So you have everyday consumables, including retail brands like Uniqlo. Is there anything else that you would like to highlight about the Nikkei?
Yes, retail services normally account for, I guess, around 15% of index weight.
Oh, okay.
And the service industry around 9%, communications around 8%. These are some domestic, some typed some stocks. So that in total around 30% or 40% we have some, that index is moved based on some domestic, some stocks movement. That means even where Japanese yen fluctuate or some tech companies having some huge, some even positive or negative impact, but also these some domestic some companies some weight or some exposure could some reinforce the index some movement. especially so since 2025. Unfortunately, we saw very huge some tensions of tariff wars. And we have another some stock index topics, which is a market capitalization, weighted average somewhere index, and of course Toyota, which is one of the some largest company in Japan, having the biggest some index weight. These Toyota or automobile companies could give us some suffer having some negative impact from their tariff wars or some tariff some confusion.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Nikkei is a bit tricky and different, so that you could see some different stories, investment some strategies using that Nikkei related index futures and options.